Well, friends, we've officially reached the end of the live content cycle for MLB The Show 22. My name is Kasabi from ShowZone, and we got an update to the schedule for the Forever program going into January. We had our second AL versus NL event that came out today, and as a part of that, we got the last three cards that will likely be released in MLB The Show 22, from all indications at least. I don't see anything further on in the schedule that lets us know that we'll be getting any new cards anytime soon or at all. And because of that, this will be our final episode of Best in Show for MLB The Show 22. We'll be going over the best true and meta overall squads that you could potentially build in the game. For those of you who are going to be playing the next few years, might not get MLB The Show 23 and want to keep playing until the server shut off, these are the best possible teams that you can build in MLB The Show 22. So the best catcher in the game is going to be Joe Mauer. His power, contact, and defense, it's just completely 5 stars across the board. Definitely the best catcher you can get by far. Jimmy Fox would be your next best hitting option, but is going to suffer a bit more significantly on defense, so take that as you will. Mauer is going to get you a little bit of both offense and defense. Beyond that, your options at catcher are most likely going to be Joe Torre's finest card or Mike Piazza's finest card. It finally happened though. George Brett is out of the lineup. One of the first collection rewards of MLB The Show 22 is no longer at first base or third base. First base, we have Stan Musial, who is just one of the best overall hitters in the game. He does have some outfield secondaries, but does play first base quite well. Over at third base, we have Gary Sheffield, whose power is just too high to ignore. Again, George Brett, one of the first collection rewards, has some decent power against righties, and his contact is all the way up, but the game does tend to favor power, especially at the third base position. So Sheffield is rated the best third baseman in the game. Looking at the rest of the infield, you have two options at shortstop. Barry Larkin's card has a lot higher statistics just because of his inflated power numbers. I know a lot of you probably still use Jimmy Rollins, who's solid all across the board. He just has a little bit less power, but everything else he tends to be better than Larkin, aside from power and vision. So his contact, his speed, and his fielding is going to be higher. If you definitely need a little bit more of a boost as a defensive shortstop, I would go with Jimmy Rollins personally, but Larkin does get the edge in terms of the rankings. And at second base, we have 22's finest Jose Altuve, which, looking at the position players, is the lowest position of the bunch. So second baseman's probably the one that's going to be the toughest to find an endgame card for. Jose Altuve's card is going to be the best. We do have some other options such as Hank Aaron, who could play second base. Looking at the outfield, we do have a few new options. Mickey Mantle, obviously the new collection reward, touted as the best card of all time by the developers. You can put him in left or center field. Griffey's probably going to be your other of those two that you want to switch between left and center. And the new milestone Cody Bellinger card, you can play at right field. You can also put him at first base if you want to, switch him and Musial. Just Bellinger's going to have a bit more speed and range out there in the outfield. So as mentioned on the bench, you have Hank Aaron's Face of the Franchise card, just an overall solid, versatile card that you can plug in almost anywhere. And the rest of the bench also takes into account different secondaries, players who can play at multiple positions. So there are a few players who might have a slightly better true overall, but they kind of only show up in one position. So this is going to get you the most well-rounded team. We touched over Hank Aaron, Jimmy Fox. Babe Ruth can play right field or first base. He's also great for power off the bench. And the other two cards that we have is Vladimir Guerrero's finest card in the outfield and Jose Ramirez's 22 finest card at third base. If you're looking for some other options, there are quite a few high-rated first basemen, such as the milestone Albert Pujols card. That one's actually the top-rated card that's left off the roster, followed closely by Pete Alonso's 22 finest card. Now we'll get a look at the starting rotation. The Takashi collection reward is the highest rated true overall card in the history of when we've been tracking on ShowZone. It's a 118.14, so Ohtani is going to be, just with his power at the plate and pitching, the best overall card on both sides. Absolute monster in the rotation. I mean, you're not going to find a better hitting pitcher anywhere. There are quite a few that can hit, but not nearly at Ohtani's level. Rounding out the rotation, the Randy Johnson Milestone Perfect Game card is in second place at a 112.53, also one of the highest rated cards. I think it's a top 5 card in terms of true overall. Just beyond that, you have Clayton Kershaw, Jacob deGrom, and the new Justin Verlander card, one of the few event cards that I really think you should go after of the 6 that you get by playing events. Justin Verlander's card is good enough to crack your rotation. The first few out of the rotation would be Walter Johnson's Takashi card, just slightly below Justin Verlander. They're both the same price at the time of this video. However, Verlander's already a flashback reward for the second AL versus NL events, plus you'll have the other one coming up in January, so he'll end up being a bit cheaper than somebody that you find in a BR or World Series program, for example. Also, just missing the rotation, Greg Maddox's finest card and Roy Halladay's perfect game milestone card are also some great options. In the bullpen, we have 8 arms. All of them are over 100 except for one, which is just outside that 100 threshold. So the top rated bullpen arm in the game is the Takashi Dennis Eckersley card, just a hair under the 102 mark. Also the 2020 finest Liam Hendricks, just a little bit below 102. A lot of good 22 finest relief pitchers, though. They really went nuts with those. So you have Yohan Duran, Edwin Diaz, Evan Phillips is one of those cards again that's just below a 100. Daniel Bard's also another great option in the bullpen. He's left off of the rankings here. From the free postseason program, Ryan Presley's 22 card is the 4th best reliever in the game. And a few finest rewards with Joe Nathan and Eric Gagne from some of the programs in the other programs section. Now you might be looking at the bullpen for the true overall squad and wondering why they're all right-handed pitchers, and that's just because they're considerably better than any lefties. We'll go over some more of the viable lefty options once we get to the meta overall squad, because you do want a bit of a mixture on your team. Just these right-handers are just super good. But again, there's the true overall squad. Any surprises from you guys? I personally am shocked to see Barry Larkin a headliner ahead of a collection reward. I know a lot of you will probably say Jimmy Rollins is better from your personal experience. This is just the developer rankings. Like I said, Larkin has a little bit added power that tends to give him a little bit more of a boost than speed or fielding would. I'm also surprised to see the milestone Cody Bellinger card in there. A lot of people tend to like Cody Bellinger cards. It just doesn't seem to fit in with all the rest of the legends, but he is quite a beast over there in the outfield and at first base, another option there. So let's look at the meta overall squad, and again, meta overall is based on our rankings on ShowZone, just what we would consider an endgame card. True overall pertains to the developer rankings and what they assess cards to be. So starting lineup for the meta overall squad, some familiar faces from the true overall squad, including Joe Mauer at catcher, again the best catcher in the game. Cody Bellinger's made the move from right field over to first base, but in the outfield you still have Ken Griffey Jr. and Mickey Mantle. For some reason it flip-flopped the two from left field to center field from our true overall squad, but again, can't go wrong either way. Infield is significantly different though, so Trey Turner, one of everybody's favorite cards from previous years, he had a postseason card that you can put at second base. Jeremy Pena's MVP postseason card from 2022 is your best shortstop. Again, though, Jimmy Rollins and Barry Larkin very close. At third base, it likes having Nolan Arenado over there because of his defense. There are quite a few third basemen that you could put over there as well, including Bobby Witt Jr. And over in right field, you have Bryce Harper. He has a couple 99 overall cards. Our rankings tend to like the 2022 postseason version of Bryce Harper better in terms of those two. Plenty of outfield options, though. We have a lot of them on the bench just due to versatility. So if you like Mike Trout, he is an option out there in the outfield. Harper's just a little bit easier to get in the other program. But we also have Aaron Judge's milestone card and Alfonso Soriano. I swear to you, he's very underrated. Can play outfield or second base. Can plug him in anywhere. Diamond defense, max power. His vision's just a little bit tiny, but then again, there are a lot of cards like Aaron Judge who also have vision that is a bit lower, but he does rake. And again, at shortstop, you can't go wrong with Jimmy Rollins in the lineup, especially as some speed off the bench if you do decide to start Jeremy Pena as per the rankings. A lot of shortstops and outfielders on the first out cards too. So we have Brian Reynolds' card is the first card out from the 2022 Finest Series. Barry Larkin at shortstop. Bobby Witt we already mentioned. At catcher, Joe Torre's on the bench. Mike Piazza is the next option at catcher if you tend to like a little bit more power. And Byron Buxton with his speed and power combination is another outfielder that you can look at. His contact's just a little bit lower, so it is one of those kind of boom or bust hitters where you're going to hit a home run or probably not. Now let's look at the starters for the meta overall squad, and no surprise, the best starter in the game is the new Randy Johnson World Series Reward Perfect Game Milestone version. We've had 299 Randy Johnson cards, and why not? He was one of the most anticipated legends of all time, and I can totally see why we have two different Randy Johnson cards this year. Randy Johnson's meta overall for this card is a 103.21, so he broke our 100 threshold by quite a few points. The best meta card in the game for MLB The Show 22. Honestly, though, there's a great 1-2-3 punch with Johnson, Corbin Burns, and Jacob deGrom, a couple great 22 finest cards. After that, it starts to drop off just a teeny bit, so Walter Johnson and Clayton Kershaw's cards are a few points below 100. But again, some great options there in the starting rotation. We touched over it last month. One of the surprises for the bullpen and one of the overall highest meta scores in the game is Devin Williams' 2020 finest card, a flashback from a couple years ago. He is the best relief and closing pitcher by a few points. It's not even close, really. But after that, there are some great options that are a 98 score. Billy Wagner's Takashi card, Gossage, and Chapman. So you're starting to see a little bit more of the lefties, like I alluded to in the true overall squad. They tend to have a higher meta because they are lefties. Jose Alvarado, also a lefty. But for some of the righty cards, a lot of differences between this and the true overall scores. So Eric Gagne is there at almost 98. Sir Anthony Dominguez from the 2022 postseason. And Daniel Bard rounds out the bullpen at a 97.05. So again, to recap, these are the two squads that our system spits out for true overall and meta overall. It's probably good to use a combination of both. They're both equally helpful in helping you build a team. As we touched over, meta overall tends to favor a little bit more lefties because there aren't too many of them in the game. So that's why you saw so many righties in the true overall squad. There just happen to be historically more dominant right-handed pitchers. And there's definitely some that you can pick and choose, put into your bullpen, depending on how many lefty-lefty matchups you want to use when you go into competitive play. Me personally, I think though that infield is really up for debates. A lot of the infielders that you have, there's a wide variety of players you can use and still be good with. Outfield is one of those where there's so many options, but I feel like most people are going to have Mickey Mantle, Ken Griffey Jr. in their outfield once they can get them. Mantle being one of the collection rewards, very tough to get, and Joe Mauer tends to be the most solid catcher in the game. So those three, I feel like most people are going to use in their lineups from there. Just use your personal preference. You might have some swings that you're better with for some players as opposed to others. And obviously for pitching, Randy Johnson is your top ace in the game. We kind of knew that once they announced him as a legend that they're adding to the game. The collection reward gave people nightmares in ranked seasons, competitive play, even some of the qualifiers that were happening. Randy Johnson was just being used everywhere. He started to kind of fall off a little bit towards the middle and end of MLB 22 before they gave him the new World Series reward for the perfect game, and now he's really back into the meta. It's getting to the point where people are starting to read Randy Johnson a little bit more in terms of having seen him all year long, but the new one is just so good with his hits per 9, walks per 9. It's going to be very hard to get base hits off of him against a lot of players. But again, that's going to do it for Best in Show for MLB The Show 22. We'll have more off-season content between January and March whenever the new game comes out. We'll obviously keep you up to date with some of the news for MLB The Show 23. But in the meantime, we'll have some of our own original series as well, where we take a look at some older cards in MLB The Show history, including some players in their first appearances in Diamond Dynasty, and also some players that we might look at for potential new legends in MLB The Show 23 and what they would be like in the game. We have a few video examples from last offseason here, but we would love to know which players you'd want to see in MLB The Show 23. For more information on how to build your team and look over some other player options at certain positions, you can visit our website at showzone.io. We have our team builder feature. You can also do theme teams, which is a new feature that's been added. So if you're starting to get a little bit stale about some of the God Squad teams, go ahead and use that. We have plenty of options to help build some fresh and new content as you pass the time until March. Signing off, this is Kasabi. Hope to hear more about MLB The Show 23 here soon. But until then, we'll see you next time.